Larry Frier.
And where do you live, Larry?
Right now, 59 River Road.
Okay, and what about what about before you went into the service?
Okay.
Have you lived in Hoosick Falls
All
long?
my life.
All
I
right.
was born in Troy, brought home to Hoosick Falls, and I've been here ever since. I lived at 7 California Avenue with my parents, and normal kid, grew up, went through high school, as Mr. Leonard knows.
Yeah, you went to Hoosick Falls Central.
Hoosick Falls Central, and left there, and Mr. Balder arranged for me to get a job at Reynolds Tool and Die, and less than a year later I received my draft notice. So I called Trapper Allard, who was another Hoosick Falls guy, and he was an enlistment sergeant, and took a 3-year enlistment so that I could get my choice of what I wanted to do, which was electronics. And I went to Fort Dix, New Jersey for my basic training.
All right, when did you get in? Would you give us the date?
That was January. I was sworn in January 17th, 1966. And then, I think it was the 17th, and went from Albany, of course, right to basic training at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, or Fort Dix, I'm sorry. Whoa.
Yeah.
Came home for a short leave, and then returned to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey for microwave radio school, microwave radio repair. Graduated from there, got a month's leave, and shipped directly to Vietnam. Was attached to the 518th Signal Corps, who at that time, when I arrived, the base of this 518th Signal was in Vung Tau, Vietnam, which was the in-country R&R center. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful, on the ocean. Flew from there to my next assignment, which was my actual assignment. The 518th was all over Vietnam. There was no central location for it other than their main office. And went to Nha Trang. At Nha Trang, they told me I'd be on Han Tre Island. So I got on they put us aboard a duck, military type vehicle, large wheels on land and propellers in the water, and sent us to Han Tre, about 3 miles across the Bay of Nha Trang. And then we had a microwave site on top of that. We installed that. Two 204-foot towers on a plateau on Han Tre Island. And we proceeded to run that and then start site installations, which we went all over Vietnam installing microwave sites. It was Track 29 equipment, which is now so obsolete. It isn't even funny with tubes.
Yeah. Well.
And after that, we installed all over country. I came out of Vietnam. The day I came out was the Bob Hope Christmas show in Cam Ranh Bay, Vietnam. I saw the Bob Hope show, returned to barracks, threw my duffel bag on my shoulder, got on a bus and caught a plane.
All right, let's talk a little about Vietnam. In other words, you went and set up these microwaves so you could keep all your troops, communications open.
Well, not actually troops. What we were running is like office communications, headquarters of companies through us. General Westmoreland's communications came through us. From wherever he was, it would come through a microwave site, and the shots all the way down, like the links of a chain, all the way down Vietnam, all the way to Saigon, and then back from Saigon to Han Tre, down from Han Tre to Nha Trang, and then to what's called a SATCOM unit, which is a communication system where microwave radio is bounced off of satellites. And it was a single shot from Nha Trang to Fort Belvoir, Virginia. And that was direct to the Pentagon, and then directly in line to the Pentagon.
I see. So that was your job. You
we
to
had
keep these things going and
all the time.
Build
new ones and set them up.
Now, could you tell us anything about Vietnam, the beauty of the country? You were talking to me about it.
Gorgeous country. Nha Trang itself, the beach is like 50 miles from one point to the other, all white sand, 80+ degree water. Because of the islands off of Nha Trang, there's no real heavy surf. wild bananas all over the place, and they're so flavorful. Everything, the food is wonderful. The people themselves in South Vietnam were some of the friendliest people I've ever met. Even the VC were friendly when they weren't shooting at you.
I see.
You didn't know which was real and which wasn't. But,
I see. Do you have anything to say about Vietnam and your feelings about it? And,
I think there was a lot of misfeelings, I think. But here in the country, there were a lot of people who were against the war in Vietnam. I can't see anybody not being against a war. But they didn't support the troops. And they were just men doing what they felt was their job and their duty to their country. As Hoosick Falls is known for, this is a military town. Yeah. People in here went. I came home from Vietnam, and thanks to the people of Hoosick Falls that more or less dealt with it, a lot of people didn't, that I know. They went to other places, and they were put down and everything else. In Hoosick Falls, you were patted on the back.
So that was nice, yeah. All right, so that's your whole, that's all you want to say about Vietnam?
More or less, that's about all that really happened. There was a lot of, you did a normal job most of the time. Then the site would get hit, and they'd throw satchel charges at you and shoot more mortars, and you return fire and keep going from there. And you'd have battles, and then you wouldn't. It was just whenever you got hit, and you just kept going and installing and building another site.
I see. Okay, so now you saw the show
and came and got on a bus, had a kid from my own graduating class come down the aisle.
Who was that?
Pete Rose from Petersburg.
Yeah. He
came down the aisle of the bus when I was getting on to go home.
I see.
And one other little funny story. I was going on the R&R in Tokyo. My buddy and I from Monterey, and we're going up. And in the military, they pay you in a war zone. They pay you an MPC, military payment script, or monopoly money, as most of us called it. You know, so and the only difference between denominations is color. So you're sitting there trying to make sure how much money you got and this and that and the other thing. To leave the country, you have to change the FPC to greenback dollars, American dollars. Then when you got wherever you're going, you had to change it into their money. Because greenbacks are a black market item anywhere out of this country, really. You get American dollars, even in Europe. Today, they really want to get hold of those greenbacks, and they do a lot with them. I'm counting the money and everything else, and I get up through, and this boy says, and I quote him, "The hell with you, Frier, I'm taking your money." I looked up, it was Joe Rancourt from here in the village.
Yeah.
He was at Da Nang and changing money. He was doing paymaster work at Da Nang at that time.
Yeah.
It's comical. The farther away you go, the more people you meet from local. But that's it. And then I came home, and that's an interesting story. But because of the international date lines, I arrived in Hoosick Falls a half an hour before I left Vietnam.
They flew you right back straight, huh?
Yes.
A couple stops and.
Yeah, at that time quite a few stops because the 707s did not have that long a range on them. But I got home and then came across country, caught a bus in New York, and came up, caught another bus in Albany, the Bennington bus, and instead of going to Bennington, told the driver I wanted to get off down at 7 and 22. Well, he let me off at 7 and 22, and the golden thumb, you know?
Yeah.
And if I'd have been 10 minutes earlier, my parents were coming home from Connecticut, they would have been the ones to pick me up.
Yeah, that would have been terrific, yeah.
I don't know whether it would have or not. Anyway, Mr. Saluzzo picked me up, and he brought me to my home, and from there on we went.
All right, so you were home now,
yeah.
Out of the service.
No, when I came back out of Vietnam, I was not out of the service.
Oh, you weren't?
I had a month leave out of Vietnam.
I see.
Then had to re-report to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, where I was assigned as an instructor, teacher, and I had to go through their teacher certification program in the service. I did that, and then I became a teacher of electronics at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey,
All right, when did you get out of Vietnam? What,
I got out of
in what?
Vietnam, I came home the 30th of December, 1967.
I see. So you still had 2 years in the service.
I still had 1 year to go.
I see.
Basically 1 year.
So you became an instructor at Fort Monmouth?
Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. I taught school down there. Yeah. And that was a regular job. Mine just happened to be all night. See, Fort Monmouth at the time ran 3 shifts of students. You had the day shift, the evening shift, and the night shift. And you just kept right on going. It was around the clock. And that's what I did down there. I taught transistor theory. And now I understood, at that point I understood how hard it was for you to teach us algebra when you had that course. It was foreign. Anyway, then I got out of Fort Monmouth. I came home. I was discharged from Fort Monmouth, New Jersey.
What date was
And that was January of...
69.
Yeah, it was January 69. It just started 69. All my dates of service are right close to January, and they're very difficult. Which year was it?
Well, good, you had 3 years. So you had 3 years.
I had a full 3 years. I had 3 years minus 1 day.
I see.
I think that was the International Dateline Day.
All right, now, when they rotated you back from Vietnam, what, did they have a point system, or how come you were rotated? Oh, everybody spent 1 year.
Everybody in the Army, everybody I knew of, it was a 1 year hitch, which is one of the things that makes it very, very difficult for any of us from Vietnam to find any of the other people that we were with, because we were all on a different schedule. You moved on a one-person group. You were all alone. You just went and that was it. You came in alone, you left alone. The other people, you didn't know where they were. It wasn't like in World War II where they weren't units. Units would move. You kept track. You had a guy that was in the unit with you. You knew him forever. In Vietnam, you rotated through kind of on your own.
I see.
So it's a little different, but.
I haven't had many, you're the first Vietnam person, so I'd like to ask you some questions about just basically, in other words, it was all a hit and miss. It wasn't, there'd be a battle and then it slowed down and then there was another battle.
That's the way it was in certain places. In certain places in Vietnam, they fought 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
I see.
It was a constant thing. usually 90% at night. The Viet Cong were underarmed comparative to us, but it was like trying to find a deer hunter out in the woods around here. You'd not go to. And they knew that like the back of their own hands. They were underground and everything else, so they would strike under darkness where they could get away with things. And their lack of heavy equipment and so on was made up for by stealth. And that's where we had the problems. Because the guy that cut your hair downtown on Thursday night was throwing satchel charges into your bunker. It wasn't. It was like we'll take 50% of Hoosick Falls and make them the red team, and 50% make them the blue team, and don't put anything on them. Tell them they can only fight at night, and never tell anybody else which side they were on. And they're basically what you had. You never knew. The term Mama San was the lady who you'd hire. She'd clean your house and wash your clothes and do the ironing and all that kind of thing. And you didn't know whether she was South Vietnamese or VC, because VC were South Vietnamese too. You didn't know.
I see.
They've been at war historically for what, 4,000 years?
I see. So that was the real problem.
That's
couldn't find your enemy.
Where is he? Unless he was shooting at you, didn't know he was your enemy. Because if he dropped his rifle and came out with his barber shears, he was going to cut your hair. But he also had a straight razor where he might cut your throat.
I see. So it was a different kind of war than World War II, where they
it was similar to Korea, but different, because in Korea you knew your enemy and you knew your friends. But in Korea they could also infiltrate back and forth, so you weren't real sure. But it was predominantly,
Okay, I'm interested in, because it was really a different type of fighting.
It was a pure guerrilla warfare.
Well, that happened in Korea also, where
Yes.
they infiltrated and they didn't
You
know
had
who their enemy
pieces
was.
of that.
Yeah,
But now take away 80% of the organized action, make it all guerrilla. And you
I
get
see.
where the problems were. That's one of the reasons why Vietnam went down, is now communist Vietnam, because they were still, even when we left, they were all infiltrated throughout. Had spent years and years infiltrating the infrastructure of South Vietnam.
I see.
Nobody knew where anybody's loyalties were.
I see. Well, that's interesting, because that gives us some more vision into the type of war it was.
Different.
All right, now you're home.
I came home out of the service. I went to work for a construction company in the office and moved on. As I thought back in the recent times, I spent about 10 years bouncing from one job to the other job, couldn't seem to keep anything together, divorced twice, and came back to the Falls where I could put things together.
I see. Where are you living?
In Troy,
I see.
in Albany, in Schenectady, in Cohoes, in all over the place.
I see. And then you
Basically
came
all.
back to Hoosick Falls.
Came back to Hoosick Falls during the energy crisis in '74. There was no work in the city. I got a job at Falls Hardware. Came back to Hoosick Falls, and I worked there for a while. Then got a job down here for the village of Hoosick Falls in the dispatch, and I've been there 20 years.
Oh, you've been dispatcher for 20 years.
Well, actually, as of June, I'm heading into my 21st now.
I see.
So I now have a wife, a home, 2 kids, a grandson.
And you got a good normal life going.
Yeah, with a few rough edges.
Yeah, well, everybody has the rough edges. Okay, so that's the story now.
Well,
You
basically-
got, how old are your children?
I have a daughter who is 30, wait a minute, she's 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's 30 years old. I have a son who is 24.
He worked, I see him
20.
on Bennington.
No, it'd be 25. Yes, he does radio. He's on
Yeah,
radio up there in Bennington.
Yeah, because I remember he was at the high school when I was superintendent
Yeah.
just the last time. Yeah. Good, so that's the story of Larry Frier.
Yeah, more or less.
Okay, and we thank you very much for coming.
Okay, sir.